Hey everybody, it's Torrance with Sword Guy Builds. For this overview, I wanted to do something I've been thinking about for a long time, which is the concept of using flat braids as working strands. So this whip will have off-color flat braids through the braiding and the knot work. Because of that, it's going to take a lot longer to make than it would otherwise, so this one's just going to be a little short 5-footer. Hope you enjoy. Since I want to focus on the accents, I won't show the belly being made. That part is already done, and I have essentially a 10 plat overlay ready, which the flat braids will bring to 12. So the plan is to have 2 6-strand flats in the overlay, and they'll be the first to drop out, so they need to be at least 4 feet or so, plus tails to taper out once they're dropped. I also need a flat of about 3 feet to work into the heel. The math on all this dictates that I'll need about 100 feet of lace, and I cut this from a natural and a saddle tan rawhide. All the raw lace is then carefully wet stretched before being resized. While the stranding probably took a couple hours, the stretching goes pretty quickly, maybe 10 to 20 minutes. Since I can't possibly fit the full length in my shop, I section it off into little portions of about 10 feet to resume prep. I then begin the arduous task of cutting everything down to size. These tiny strands do taper slightly, but not much. I had to balance out the ideal sizing against the investment of time spent braiding them at that size. So they start at maybe 2.5 or 3 millimeters and taper to probably 2 to 2.5. I also split them down in an attempt to reduce the disturbance in the texture of the overlay. I knew I wanted to do an under 2 over 2 pattern in these flats, and I originally wanted to do it in a specific way that produces a striped look, but I don't like how thick the edges get with that pattern. So I opted for a different under 2 over 2 sequence that lays flatter at the edges and gives a kind of rippled appearance instead. I bring each flat braid to about 5 feet over the course of roughly an hour each, and gently burnish them smooth on the hook before greasing the overlay and the belly. I decided that to keep focus on the flat braid accents, I should keep the overlay braiding simple, so I did the standard diamonds to herringbone sequence. When we're talking about establishing favorable transitional tension, I feel like there's a lot of nuance in the choices we have. Generally, I like to pull pretty hard through the handle, very hard through the first 6 inches or so past the handle, and then slowly ease to my more mindless and sustainable pull strength leading up to the first drop. But because 2 of these strands are thicker and stronger than normal, I ended up pulling them a little more gently than the surrounding strands. And I actually think I could have gotten away with a little less tension in some spots, but you know, live and learn. The flat braids are dropped into the core at the halfway mark, very carefully unbraided and tapered out like normal. With the main body of the whip done, I turn to the finish work, which means another 6-strand flat braid. The natural and saddle tan strands for this one were pared down to about 1.5 to 2 millimeters. So even though it's only 3 feet long, it still took about an hour to braid. Something I find fascinating is that patterning in flat braids follows the same logic as patterning in knots, which is different from the logic of patterning in round braids. That's because in flat braids and knots, every strand reverses direction at the edges, and that means your patterning options are a little limited, but it also means if you can put a certain pattern into a knot, you can also do it in a flat braid and vice versa. And I take advantage of that fact to put this little repeating zigzag into these flats. Originally, I had planned to use the 2-tone flat as the interweave in the heel, which would have made the knot more an accent and less a focal point, but that would have meant dragging the braid through an existing base knot, and I was concerned the black would make the braid look dingy. I also could have tied the base and interweave in the reverse order to avoid that and still get the color allocation I wanted, but that does subtly change how the strands lay together, and I just didn't want to risk hating it when it was finished, so I just made the flat the base knot. The finished whip does have a little more weight than normal, which makes sense, and the thong is a little stiffer than I'd like, but it should break in super nice. This whip is right at home with some simple combos and target work. And if I may go full-on self-congratulation, I think it's also very striking. I'm very satisfied with the result. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. Remember to like and follow, drop suggestions for whips you would like to see me make. Stay safe, and I will talk to you very soon. Bye.